First, I'd like to welcome all of you at the Arab Thought Forum. And on behalf of the Arab Thought Forum and all of you, I'd like to welcome our distinguished guest, Santiago Cabanas, the ambassador of Spain to Jordan. During last year, the Arab Thought Forum held more than 45 conferences or events or activities. Part of it was inviting some ambassadors to talk about political, economic, cultural, heritage, about all these issues. We invited the United Arab Emirates ambassador. He talked about the cultural relationship between Jordan and United Arab Emirates. We invited the US ambassador, and she talked about the political situation and the foreign policy. Also, we invited the Moroccan ambassador. He talked about the political reform in Morocco. We invited also the Indian ambassador. He talked mainly about the economic relationship between the Arab world and India. Today, we continue these activities by inviting our distinguished guest, the Ambassador of Spain, His Excellency. He will cover a wide range of aspects. Actually, last year when I met him for the first time, talking about what's the subject for this speech or lecture. And we're talking about the foreign policy of Spain, or the political situation, or the foreign policy towards the Middle East, in particular with the Arab region. And he chose the title about the relation between the Arab world and Spain. Little bit, we will pay more attention to the relationship between Jordan and Spain. So His Excellency will cover many issues: the political situation and the policy of Spain towards the Arab region, also talking about the mutual respect and friendship between Jordan and Spain. The cultural issue will be covered. Other issues are very important. Maybe one of the issues I just came to my knowledge that His Excellency is interested in the football. So anybody is interested in asking about Real Madrid or any issues related to that, he is ready and more than happy to answer as well. As you know, Spain ranks fourth among the European countries. I mean here the economic, the fourth top economic in the European countries. And he tackled the issue of the economic crisis a few years ago. Now the economy of Spain is better than before, maybe better than ever. I used to say at a certain period of time that the GDP or the national income, the gross national income of Spain exceeds the national income of the Arab world, including the oil, at a certain period of time. Yeah. This is not because Spain has more oil or has more sources, but because Spain has the administration and the willingness to do things in an efficient way. So productivity there is very high compared with the Arab countries. In Jordan, we have a good relationship with Spain, friendship. It's a model for the other countries, actually. started in 1946, and the first visit paid by His Majesty late King Abdullah the First in 1949, and it was the first for any European country he paid. So we have a good relationship, good ties, a good. Spain is a good trade partner as well with Jordan. This month, in addition to this event, we will have at the end of this month another also big event with Spain. We arranged 2 or 3 events during the last few years, but now we are going also to manage and fix and arrange 2 or 3 events talking about Andalus. Dr. Salah Jarrar, His Excellency, is working with us on that. Before leaving the floor to His Excellency, I'd like to say a few words from his CV. He graduated from Madrid University Law School. Then he joined the diplomatic career in 1981. According to that, he worked in Tehran, Washington, Eastern Europe, Miami, and in July 2013, he has been appointed as an ambassador of Spain to Jordan. So please welcome His Excellency, Mr. Santiago, and the floor is yours.
Africa started in the Pyrenees, and they said it in a way that was a bit derogatory. But for us, it was an honor. We really felt that Spain, like Portugal, like Italy, like France, part of us were African and part of us were European. And this is a wealth of richness. This is indeed enriching for our culture of our identity. Then we would become also American in the 15th century, and that would even enrich us even more. But the reality is there. We are the southern frontier of Europe, the northern frontier of Africa. And this meant another very important historical reality. With the expansion of Islam in the 8th century, most of Spain was occupied by the Arab conquerors that came to our country. This is very, very important factor because it really created the Spanish identity. It affected us in 2 ways, having the Arab presence in our country for 8 centuries. It affected us in a very ambivalent way, in a double way. On the one hand, our identity is marked by what we call la reconquista, the reconquest, the idea that we had to reconquer the land that had been taken by the Arab invaders. And this is an idea that was always there in our education. The reconquista is a myth, the idea that we were, during 8 centuries, recovering land. But at the same time, there is another reality, and this is the complementarity, the convivence of the Hispanic population with the Arab population during 8 centuries. And as Americo Castro used to say, it was undeniable tension between the understandable desire for the reconquest of the native soil that had been invaded by the expanding Islam, and at the same time, an undeniable respect for the superior culture of Muslim Spain. And this was a tension. We wanted to reconquer, but we admire our conquerors. We admire that they had a superior culture, superior architecture, superior poetry, superior scientific achievements. In this tension, we live in a peaceful coexistence, at times marred by waves of conflict, because we were advancing in our reconquest. But we were living together most of the time. And this was a history of mixing, of complementarity, because also a very interesting question that the historians have proven is that during the Reconquista, during the Reconquest, there were many times in which Christian leaders were allied with Muslim leaders, with Arab leaders, against other Christian and Muslim leaders. So it was a more complex panorama than what you could say that there was a Christian-Muslim fight. No, there was a fight between the original inhabitants of the Spanish peninsula against the invaders, but there was also a very strong complementarity, admiration, mutual admiration. There were mutual marriages. There was a common life. And in this period, indeed, which formed our identity and our soul, there was an eclosion of cultural activity. And this marked also our identity. This is the time of the monastery of Ripoll, where the first translation of the Holy Quran were made into Latin. This was the time of the Escuela de Traductores, the School of Translators in Toledo. This was the time in which the school, the first ever School of Oriental Studies in a Western country, was created in 1275, in the 13th century, already in Miramar, in Palma de Mallorca, by the great scholar Raimundo Llull. But this is the time of Averroes, this is the time of Ibn Khaldun, this is the time of Jiménez de Rada, of so many people that wanted to live together and wanted to mix our cultural values together. So this is the reality. The reality is that at the same time that there was a Reconquista, there was a very important Hispano-Muslim cultural and social symbiosis. And this is what made us, this is what we are. The Spanish people are the heritage of this symbiosis between the Muslim and the Hispanic identity. In part, this has made for what has been always called the exceptionality of the Spanish, the exceptionality of the Spanish, the exceptionality of the Spanish case. The perception that the Spaniards have of the Arab and the Muslim world, and the perception that the Arab and the Muslim world have of Spain, is very different because of that common history, of the perception that other European countries have of the Arab world and the perception that the Arab world has of other European countries. And we recognize that, and we have to construct on that. And I recognize it almost every day today here. There is a different perception because of that common legacy and because of that cultural and social symbiosis. This is what made us, the history between the 8th century and the 15th century, when finally all the Christian kingdoms of Spain were reunited in the Kingdom of Spain. Then we had, if I may continue a little bit with a historical description, then we had 2 centuries, almost 3, 16th, 17th, and almost all of the 18th centuries, in which there was a divergence. There was an indifference towards the Arab and the Muslim world. Why? Because we were centered in America. And we have here the Venezuelan ambassador. The Spanish efforts were centered in our American adventure, in an American identity. And so we neglected the other part of our soul, the other part of our identity, the Arab-Muslim identity. These were years or 2 centuries of indifference. Things started to change at the end of the 18th century. Why? It started to change with the Enlightenment and with the arrival of the new dynasty in Spain, the Bourbons. The Bourbons dynasty meant that we got closer to France, and France had been a traditional ally of Turkey. So that meant that we got closer again to Turkey and to the Orient. And that meant also that we started to value the wealth that we had in Al-Andalus and what it could mean for commercial routes and what it could mean to our commercial interest in the Mediterranean. So again, especially with one very important minister, Floridablanca, we rediscovered again the Arab-Muslim world and an Arab-Muslim soul, or part of our identity. And in fact, we did sign in those last years of the 18th century treaties of friendship with Turkey, with Algeria, with Tunisia, with Oran, and with Mohammed III in the, what was then that part that was Morocco. In the 19th century, there was a growing attention to everything Muslim and everything Arabic and everything Mediterranean. We had many Arabists, great Arabists. We had many travelers. we opened up the Consulate General in Jerusalem, one of the first ones at the beginning of the 19th century. We had the religious orders, especially the Franciscans, traveling in this area. So there was a very important renewal of our interest and of our common history. And this is the time, as I said, of the great Spanish Arabist and the great interest, again, in our common culture, in our language. We have 4,000 words that coming out of Arabic in the Spanish language, second only to our Latin origin in our language, in the Spanish language, in Castellano. Then in the 20th century, the relation with the Arab world was marked by the protectorate that we had with the French in Morocco. It did mark the image that we had of the Arab world and the image that the Arab world had of us, because we were present in this protectorate in Morocco until 1956, since 1911, 1912. And this was the moment in which all our attention was centered really in Morocco. It had a very important influence because all our military people were educated in Morocco. And it had a very important impact in Franco himself, who served in Morocco during many years. And that would mark a difference in our foreign policy during the Franco years, because it generated a very important, what has been called nostalgic sympathy for the Arab world in our elites, and especially in our military elites. Let me say a word, because I think it's important, about the Franco regime and the policy of the Franco regime towards the Arab world. It has been always described as a policy of bridges or a policy of substitution, because the Franco regime, since the very beginning, was isolated in the international world, in the international scene. We were looked down by the Western powers, and so our only potential allies would be our Latin American friends and our Arab friends. But there was more than that. There was more than that. There was our common history, which cannot be forgotten, and which made us really look into the Arab world and into the Latin American world for this friendship in these moments of difficulties. But there was also political calculation. It was very interesting for us to have the friendship of the Arab world and the Latin American world at that point in moment. And we had, at that moment, you have to remember that the first General Assembly of the United Nations, one of the first resolutions ever passed, the 39-1, was a resolution of condemnation of Spain, of the dictatorship of Spain. This isolated us completely. We're talking about the year 1945. So, as I said, we looked upon Latin America and Africa in every regards possible. Economically, because we needed help. Argentina was of great help. We started already importing oil from the Middle East, and the great help, we received the great help in these moments of need from the Arab world. Culturally, we created already in 1950, under the guidance of the great Taba Hussein, the Egyptian Cultural Center in Madrid, and we created what was called Instituto Hispano-Árabe de Cultura, the Institute Hispano-Arab of Culture, which was a project of the great Arabist Emilio García Gómez. And if I have time, I will talk about Emilio García Gómez later on. He was ambassador to Iraq and ambassador to Egypt, and the great Arabist of the 20th century. But the crucial moment came with the partition of Palestine and the war of 1948. This was a very crucial moment in the relation between Spain and the Arab world. Immediately, Spain stood up for the rights of the Palestinians and for the Palestinian cause. Of course, it was out of sympathy for the Palestinian cause. It was out of our common history. But it was, we have to admit, out of political calculation, because we needed the Arab support to overcome the political isolation in which the regime was. And our foreign minister, Martín Artajo, who was a clever man, he saw the opportunity of linking the Palestinian cause with the Spanish cause. And he said, if we support the Palestinians, the Arabs will support us in the United Nations to overcome the isolation. And it played well. It played well. Perhaps at the beginning it was not intended, but he saw it immediately, because first, at the very beginning, we stood up for the Palestinian cause. But very soon, we understood that this could be very interesting for the interest of the Spanish foreign policy. In 1949 already, we were ready, with the support of the Arab countries, we were ready to overcome this condemnation of Spain. We had the votes already to overcome and nullify the Resolution 39-1 in the General Assembly, with the passive look of the Western powers, who were not still interested in supporting Spain overtly, but who were starting already to be worried about the Cold War, and said it's better to have them on our side than against us. But they were still a bit passive. It was the Arab world and the Latin American world that were pushing for the repeal of 39-1 in Europe. And then what happened? What happened was that Israel got admitted in the UN. And we were not expecting it. Israel made a radical opposition to the repeal of 39-1. There was a very strong, very radical speech by Abba Eban in that 1949, and we couldn't overcome the opposition of Israel and others who did not dare to reject 39-1. But we had the support of the Arab countries, and the Arab countries had the support of us. And this marked the relation for a long time to come. It marked the friendship with Spain, with the Arab world, and it marked the rejection of Israel, and marked a policy of non-recognition of Israel for many, many years to come. This was a very important event. Of course, with the support of the Arab countries in 1955, we managed to overcome the rejection, and we joined the United Nations. Then we had another long ministry with Fernando Castilla. Martín Artajo was minister for 12 years. He was very much pro-Arab. But Castilla, his successor for 12 years until 1969, was also very much pro-Arab. And he continued Martín Artajo policy under the guidance of Franco, whom, as I said, had this very sentimental attachment to the Arab world because of his years he had spent in Africa. During the years of Castilla, and I'm talking 57, 69, we also had the agreement with the United States in which they had bases in Spain, military bases in Spain. So when the war in 67 came, Spain was very afraid that the United States would push for the use of bases in support, to give logistical support to Israel. But we managed to avoid that. And this was also highly appreciated by the Arab world. In fact, immediately after the war, King Hussein asked to come to Spain, and of course we received him. It was one of the very important visits we had at that time. But it also marked a very important moment in which Spain made all it could to help the Palestinian cause and to help and support the Arab nations. In Spain at that time, there were 716 students with scholarships from Spain. Spain provided a fund for those who could not receive funds from Jordan in those years, and we sent, first time ever, because we were not a rich country, in fact we were a poor country, first time ever, apart from some help that we had given some Latin American countries in cases of natural. This policy of friendship with the Arab world, of rapprochement with the Arab world, of strong support to the Palestinian cause, continued together with the rejection of recognition of Israel during the time of the political transition and until 1986. 1986 was the following turning point. Why? Because it's the year that we joined the European Union, finally, and it was the year in which Spain recognized the state of Israel and established diplomatic relations with Israel. Why was this together? Well, obviously, when you join the European Union, you are part of a larger union, and you are in a certain way multilateralizing your policies. You're not an exceptional case anymore. So we did lose, indeed, a uniqueness, an exceptionality in the Arab world, the only Western country that did not recognize Israel and had no relations with Israel. We did lose that exceptionality, that uniqueness, but we, at the same time, we gained influence. We gained capacity of action. And this is what permitted us to host the 1991 Peace Conference in Madrid. And this is what permitted us, and this I think is very important, to lead the policies towards the Mediterranean of the European Union. Our Arab policy became, in a way, an Arab Mediterranean policy. But this in itself, although we might have lost something, has made us gain a lot of leverage, a lot of influence. And together with France and Italy mainly, we've been, and the Commission, we have to be fair with the Commission, Spain, France, Italy, Portugal in many instances, and the Commission, we led the different policies of the European Union towards the Mediterranean and towards the MENA region. Since already 1990, because it was that was a turning point, what was called the renewed Mediterranean policy of 1990 of the European Union, which established really the ground rules for an increased political, economic, financial assistance to the northern Mediterranean and the Middle East region, to the MENA region. And we're still living from those years, from those bases that were established in 1990, what was called the renewed Mediterranean policy. And by the way, the commissioner in charge of that was Abel Matutes, who would then, a Spaniard, who would then become Minister of Foreign Affairs and who would continue his policy of strong friendship with the Arab countries. I was honored to be, at that time, his chief of staff. We traveled a lot in the region, and I'm witness to his commitment so that the European Union wouldn't look only to the Eastern, as it was, especially after the fall of the Berlin Wall, looking, but that it would look also to the Mediterranean, and not only politically, but financially, with every dollar or euro spent in the East had to be spent doubled in the South, in the Mediterranean area and in the MENA region. Then we established, in 1991, we sent the initiative of the Conference of Security and Cooperation in the Mediterranean. We were supported by Italy, we were supported by Portugal, but it had little success. So we had to abandon that idea, which was based on the same concept for Europe, a Conference of Security and Cooperation in Europe, which had been successful, but we were not successful. We didn't manage to get enough support for these ideas. We launched again in 1992 the Euro-Mediterranean Association, together with the Commission, which was very, very important. We launched the idea of a development bank for the Mediterranean, and we, again with our friends from the South, we launched the vision that the Mediterranean is an international region of vital interest for Europe. This was the beginning of what would become then the Barcelona process in 1995, and finally now the Union for the Mediterranean, after we changed it a little bit. It was not possible to create the Mediterranean Union, but we created the Union for the Mediterranean, where we are at now. This is where we are now, and this is the framework in which we work in cooperation with our Northern African friends and with the MENA region. It is a very important policy, and I think we have managed together, again, I mention it because I think it's fair to say it, with our friends, our southern Mediterranean countries, like Italy, like France, like Greece, like Portugal, we have really maintained the attention of the European Union towards this region. Let me say a few words about Jordan and the relation between Spain and Jordan. The starting point was very positive again. You mentioned the visit of His Majesty King Abdullah I to Spain in 1949. It came precisely at that moment after the war and at the moment in which we were fighting for recognition and for the overthrow of Resolution 39-1, which really made us a pariah in the international world. It was the first visit ever of His Majesty to a Western country. And he was extraordinarily well received. Obviously, because of that common interest. We were interested in the support of Jordan. Jordan was interested in our support for the Palestinian cause and for the Arab causes. So we received him. We did everything we could to make him feel comfortable. He stayed 10 days in Madrid, in Valencia. He even went to La Coruña, up north, where he still has a very important street, Rey Abdullah, Calle Rey Abdullah. And he was so happy. Probably some of you have heard me this anecdote before, that when he left, he told Franco, you know, I've been very happy, I'm very grateful, and I can tell you, you Spaniards are one of the best Arab people. And we felt so proud. We felt so proud, because really being considered an Arab people by His Majesty was something that made us feel proud. Because really, as I explained, it is in our identity, it is in our soul that we're also an Arab people. We are it by blood, because we're all mixed blood. We all have Arab blood, 8 centuries of Arabs in our country. For sure we have Arab blood in our bloods. It is a reality in our political discourse. There is a sympathy for Arab questions, no doubt about it. And I think His Majesty understood it immediately, and that is why he made those kind words. But this was a very important visit. It marked the beginning of a very important relationship between the royal houses, and it was continued by a very strong relation between the late King Hussein, his soul rest in peace, and King Juan Carlos, and now by His Majesty King Abdallah and His Majesty King Felipe. This is a very strong relationship between our royal families, and this is really very, very important. As I mentioned, a very important turning point was also the year 67, when we supported Jordan in times of need, and when we tried to help the numerous students that were at that time studying in Spain. As you know, some of you know, we had thousands of Jordanians and also Palestinians coming to Spain, especially in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, with scholarships. Many studied medicine or engineering, and really, I think this has created a bulk of friendship, a very strong bulk of friendship, and the association of doctors who studied in Spain is still very active and very important and very dear to all of us. We had, during those years, the 80s, the 90s, very strong cultural relations. We had a mission, archaeological mission here that developed very strong, important works in Qusay Ramra, at the Citadel, in Petra, in Yerash. We're very proud of that support that we could give to the archaeological missions here in Jordan. We established Instituto Cervantes here, and we, although limited now in time, we've tried to support Jordan with different projects of cooperation. We've gone, as Dr. Abu Hamura said, through a period of crisis in the last years. But again, we're picking up, our economy is growing again, we're creating employment, and thank God, again, our Agency of International Cooperation is recovering some of the funds that it had, which will permit us to continue our support in this moment of need for Jordan in this crucial moment for the whole region due to the terrible Syrian crisis and the Iraqi crisis. So we're confident that we will continue to support Jordan both bilaterally and through international organizations in this moment of need. What I can say is that today we have a common approach to all the regional issues. We have very similar positions in regarding the peace process, regarding Syria, regarding Iraq, regarding the fight against terrorism, regarding all issues, regarding climate change, regarding everything. And this has been demonstrated in the last 2 years in which we have coincided in the Security Council in New York, and we have worked together, Jordan and Spain, because we really feel very much the same in the most important issues. We in Spain regard Jordan as an example of moderation, of tolerance, as an example of peaceful coexistence and peaceful transition and change. and we want to support Jordan as much as we can. And if I may just finish with a quick recapitulation regarding the relations between Spain and the Arab world. My first point would be that really the Arab heritage is a fundamental pillar of the Spanish identity. Really, we feel that we are, as His Majesty said, we are also an Arab country. We are Europeans, no doubt. We are Americans, no doubt. But we are also Arabs. And we feel that it's 8 centuries that you cannot just push away. They have marked us, and this is part of our history. We're very, very, very proud of that. This heritage is deeply ingrained. It's ingrained in our blood, as I said. It's ingrained in our culture. We could not understand Spain without Sevilla, without Cordoba, without Granada and the Alhambra, without Madrid, which is Madrid. With Barcelona, it came a little bit less under the influence of the Arab people, but the South, Al-Andalus, is not only a myth, it's a reality. Al-Andalus is a reality, and it's part integral of our identity. So it's deeply, deeply ingrained in our identity. And it is also in our political education and in our political perception. Spain and our public opinion and the different governments are supportive of all the Arab causes, and we have shown it, and of the Palestinian causes. We've shown it every day. The last time, just the vote in UNESCO on Jerusalem, just a couple of weeks ago. But what is important, I think, is that really this has the strong backing of public opinion and all political parties. They say, and it is true, there are only 2 issues in Spanish Parliament that have the support of all the political parties. And I can assure you that the political parties in Spain, they do not agree on almost anything, but they agree on 2 things. The fight against violence against women. Every time there is anything related to gender violence, a fight against violence against women, there is unanimity. And the other thing that immediately attracts the unanimity of the Spanish Parliament is the rights of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian cause. These are the only 2 points in which we have a unanimous position in the Spanish Parliament. The third point is that really this sympathy, this legacy, together with a solid assessment of our interest, because this is not foreign policy, is a question of also defending your interest, makes our foreign policy in these last 70 years clearly geared towards the Mediterranean and towards the Arab world, towards Latin America, towards Europe, and towards the Mediterranean. And this can be seen really in our position every time inside the European Union, where we are obviously considered one of the countries that defends the position of the Arab world, that is more close to the Arab world and more interested, together with France, Greece, and Italy, in maintaining a clear, determined policy of support, financial and political, towards the Mediterranean and the MENA region. Fourth point, this relation is not exempt from conflict. I don't want to hide that. This conflict is mainly centered in the Maghreb. Why? Obviously, because we have there 2 enclaves still in Morocco, Ceuta and Melilla, which causes problem, because the issue of the Western Sahara is not fully solved, and this causes tension with Morocco again. And obviously, because we have 1 million Moroccans in our country, we have hundreds of thousands of Algerians and Tunisians, and this is normal. It's a relation between neighbors that have very strong relations. We have problems with fishing, we have problems with agricultural products. There are frictions. But above all, there is a friendship with Morocco and with the rest of the Arab world. And this is a very, very strong. The frictions are always included in this very important framework of friendship that everybody recognizes. And regarding Jordan, I will only repeat what I have said. We never had a colonial history here. On the contrary, we were the colonized. We were the only Western country colonized by the Arabs, and we're proud of that. But we never had a history of colonial interest in this part of the world, which made things easy. And the beginning of our relation with Jordan was really this 48-49 coincidence of interest in which the Palestinian cause was linked to the Spanish cause, because we still had the Spanish cause, and in which really the success of the visit of King Abdullah I to Spain marked in many ways the relations that we would have with the Arab world and with Jordan in particular. In the crucial moments when Jordan needed the help of Spain, in 47, 48, in 67, in 73, and now Spain has always been together with Jordan, at the side of Jordan. You've had our support. When Spain needed the support of Jordan, again, in 48, 49, in 68, 69, when we needed the support of the Arab world against the United Kingdom because of Gibraltar, we had the unanimous support of the Arab world. All the Arab countries, all of them, without exception, co-sponsored the resolution that called for the reintegration of Gibraltar into Spain. That was an enormous victory for still a poor Spain in the United Nations against a very powerful United Kingdom. And if we had that victory, and it was the resolution 2429/68, it was in great way thanks to the support of the Arab world and the support of the Latin American, of our American friends. And when we needed again the support of Jordan during our transition, we had the support of Jordan. So whenever Jordan needed Spain, Spain was there. Whenever Spain needed Jordan, Jordan was there. And we appreciated that. So as our king says, we do what we can. We get where we get, but now it's up to you to work. So this very strong friendship, this legacy that we have inherited, is where we have to work. And I can assure you that these strong ties are a wonderful platform, are a wonderful base, starting point to continue strengthening the relations between Spain and Jordan. And I have done, and I can assure you I will do all my best to build on that wonderful legacy, to build on that wonderful history, to continue strengthening the relations between Spain and Jordan. So thank you to all of you.
Speech or lecture, and we highly benefited from having you with us today. I'd like to thank the media they used to cover our activities and conferences, in particular the 7-Star TV, Mr. Gasmer Chid Abu Sagir Akhi. Thank you for being with us also today, because usually we used to have to finish at 6:30, but no problem, 5 to 10 minutes for you, it's okay.
For me, very gratifying, so I thank you very much. I'll try to answer the questions, but let me say first that I focused on the history because I think it was important to explain why really there is this very strong commitment of Spain towards the Arab world and towards Jordan. Trying to explain obliges us to look into the past, and I think really it's because of that very deep historical and social intertwining between Spain and the Arab world, which explains the foreign policy of Spain nowadays. On the neighborhood policy, indeed the neighborhood policy is very well and alive. In fact, we are now in the process of reviewing the neighborhood policy, and Spain, together with the southern countries of the European Union, is keen on having a balanced approach between the eastern neighborhood and the southern neighborhood. Obviously, there are countries in the European Union that are more concerned and more worried about the eastern neighborhood and about situations like Ukraine. And it's only understandable that they're worried about what's going on in Eastern Europe, and they believe that this is more worrying for the European Union and more immediately urgent for the European Union. For us, obviously, for the southern countries, what goes on in the Mediterranean basin, in the northern African countries, and in the MENA region is even more crucial. So we try to maintain a balance. And of course, in the process of reviewing the European neighborhood policy, the countries affected by Jordan are asked to contribute, and we're having different meetings with the Jordanian authorities to have the input of what they expect from the new revised neighborhood policy. This is very important, and I think we're very open and transparent in the review process of the neighborhood policy. On the association, I wanted to answer you. I'm very proud and happy to see that you have such an active associations in Spain. And of course, my doors are open. I didn't know that you had tried to see me, but I'm very happy. I'll give you my card later on. I'll be more than happy to see you. And I apologize if there had been any problem, because I didn't know it at all. But of course, I'm very, very proud to have that group of Jordanian Spaniards who are so active in defending and promoting the relations between our two countries. Like, I'm very proud in having here the associations of Jordanians that studied there. And I'll go to the study question, because there have been 2 or 3 questions about that. As you well know, we granted thousands of scholarships during many, many years to Jordanian students, many thousands of them. It's difficult to calculate how many, but in the tens of thousands of scholarships granted to Jordanian students. Many of them came back, many of them stayed. And we have very renowned doctors that my eldest daughter was born thanks to a Jordanian doctor who lives in Madrid, the doctor of my wife. There are many, many doctors, many engineers in Spain that are of Jordanian origin. Many of them came back, many of them married to Spanish ladies. We have here hundreds of Spanish ladies married to Jordanians who went to study in Spain. The truth, you're one of them. You're one of them. Well, congratulations, Mabruk. I have to admit, though, that now the scholarships given by Spanish public institutions have been drastically reduced. Drastically reduced. The only scholarships left are the ones given by the university themselves, and there are very active relations between the universities themselves. But I am sorry, and I have to admit, that I haven't managed to increase the numbers of scholarships. I hope, this is my aim, this is my objective, but as you well know, our budget for the Agency of International Cooperation was slashed in 2011 in 70% because of a financial crisis in Spain. So the AECID, the Agency of International Cooperation, had to reduce its programs of cooperation in a 70%. That is really, it was very, very hard to take. And this is why really, and I go to that, the Agency of International Cooperation was a bit more low-key during this past year. But again, we're increasing our cooperation. As you know, we financed the project of cooperation to the Social and Economic Council of Jordan. And when I arrived here, my first meeting was with Dr. Anani, because he was going to Spain, still with this project of cooperation with the Social and Economic Council, between our Social and Economic Council. But we will continue, you can be sure, and slowly, little by little, we will continue our support for Jordan in these moments of need. But the issue of scholarship is very much in my mind. I know it will take time, it will take years, probably, until we reach the levels that we had before. For the moment, our crisis has been very, very serious, and our budget has been seriously reduced. But we've still been active, and we have many, many projects going on in different issues, in water, in irrigation, in social affairs, in help to the handicapped. In Madaba, by the way, we have a wonderful project to help clinic for women, both Syrian and local, and a clinic for people handicapped, especially children, both refugees and local. So we go back to Madaba, where the origin of our invaders were, and indeed, this is one of my objectives. I know we're going more slowly than what I wished, but the circumstances are like this. I go then to the question, why we're weaker, our system, our economy is weaker than the Northern Europeans. Well, we started later, highly indebted, our financial system. We had to reform that. Second, our economy was too much based on construction, on real estate. It was a weakness, a clear weakness. And we had also some structural weaknesses. We needed a reform of the labor market. We needed a reform of the tax system. We needed some reforms that we're doing now, we've done now. And now our economy is a bit more healthy than it was before. But because of the 3 weaknesses, and Dr. Abu Hamor knows them well, because of these 3 weaknesses, we were more hardly hit than other European countries. Quickly also on the issue of the tensions. Yes, indeed. I just wanted to mention that in this nowadays that we've had tensions, but not tensions with Morocco as an Arab country, tensions with Morocco as a neighbor country, whether it is Arab or not. We also had tensions with France because it's also an Arab, a neighboring country. But obviously, the issue of Ceuta and Melilla and the issue of the Western Sahara is a weight in the relations. The Western Sahara issue is not solved yet, not definitely solved. Be more helpful. So thank you again to all of you. Thank you.